It's Richio1991 here, and I present to you a new feature on my channel where I do weekly NFL picks against the spread. I did week 1 and week 2 and did pretty good, so I figured, what the heck, I might as well come up here and make a YouTube series about this, just if for anything else, for me to go look back and look to see how horrible or how well I do on the season, and just to generate some discussion. Now, week 1 I went 4-2, week 2 I went 3-2. It's kind of moot point since I didn't actually upload anything there. But for what it's worth, week 1 the Giants were my number 1 pick. They covered, and I liked the Cardinals last week. It just seemed like a steal to me. So I'm gonna actually pick against the spread for every game. Something I've never done. I usually just do 5 really big games that I like. So I'll start off with those 5 in order that I feel most confident about, and then I'll just go through and pick the other games. And if you want any explanation why I picked another game that I didn't explain, just leave a comment and I'll message back. So we're going to start things off, and ironically I should mention, week 3 I think is a really tough week. Actually, the first 3 weeks are always tough in NFL. But number 1 team I feel most confident about that I would bet on would be the Philadelphia Eagles, getting 2.5 points plus 2.5 against the New York Jets. Oh, and by the way, I used the Scores and Odds app to find the lines for the games. I like the Eagles because the Jets, they're coming off 6 days rest off a huge emotional win on Monday Night Football against a team that made it to the AFC Championship last year, of course, the Colts. The Jets' defense does look impressive. Darrelle Revis could be reigniting a spark up in the New York with the Jets. But the Eagles, I actually had them losing and falling flat to Atlanta week 1. And I also picked the Cowboys. That was my Super Bowl pick this year, though that's up in the air now. So I had the Eagles starting off 0-2. This was planned out for me, and I have them rebounding, not traveling very far, 7 days rest, a division loss stuck in their heads, and rebounding against the New York Jets, who aren't used to seeing these NFC run offense like Chip Kelly has. So I'm gonna have to go with the Eagles here. Just sticks out to me the most, that I feel most confident about. Alright, moving on here to number 2. This was a tough pick still. That just goes to show you how tough week 3 is. But I like Pittsburgh minus 1.5 on the road, even at St. Louis. I like Pittsburgh not because of like the blowout win they had last week. That just seemed obvious. That was one of my picks last week. San Francisco coming off the short rest, Pittsburgh having 10 days rest. San Francisco coming over to the East Coast. It was just a recipe for disaster. And the reason why I'm picking Pittsburgh over St. Louis is because of Ben Roethlisberger's attitude in the offseason, talking about the offense and how they're going to score 30 plus points every week, or that's their goal or something like that. They really seem like they're into this offense. Dick LeBeau's gone, but it doesn't really matter anymore. It doesn't seem like Pittsburgh is confident. And St. Louis was impressive against the Seahawks, sure, but they always matched up well against them. And I'm not 100% buying into the Rams, but I'm not throwing them to the side either just because they lost to the Redskins. But I think Pittsburgh matches up good with their offense in the Dome at St. Louis. I'm going with Pittsburgh minus 1.5. Alright, so number 3. It's tough to pick against Arizona since I picked them week 2. But I'm going to go with the 49ers here plus 6.5 at Arizona. I'm not sure if they're going to win the game, but I think they'll keep it close enough. They'll probably do a lot more running with Colin Kaepernick. Close enough to keep the game close. And Arizona, I think they're a really good team. They could probably win their division, but just because I think they could win the division and win 12 games possibly this season doesn't mean that they're going to cover this particular game. San Francisco, yeah, I think they're a train wreck, and they might only win 4 or 5 games this year. But I think in these NFC West division games, I think they could at least hold Arizona to possibly beating them only by a field goal here. So I'm going to go with San Francisco as my number 3 pick. Number 4, I have San Diego. They lost a really close game against Cincinnati. I'm not jumping on the Minnesota bandwagon just yet. San Diego's plus 2.5. I think their offense is explosive enough to come into Minnesota and put up a win here. And lastly, my number 5, I like Kansas City plus 6.5. They usually do well in these primetime games. Like last year, it was such a big deal when they played the Patriots. They're coming off the 10 days. Actually, they have 11 days rest, I think. Green Bay coming off that huge emotional win against Seattle. They've been thinking about that game all off season. It's hard to go against Aaron Rodgers, but I just like Kansas City with the points here, given how much rest they have and how much they're really into these primetime games and trying to upset. And you know they're still thinking about what happened against Denver last week. So while I think Green Bay's the better team, I'm going to have to go with Kansas City on this. Now for the rest of the games here, I'm just going to go through and get my picks. I like the Giants minus 4. Houston minus 6.5. Carolina minus 3. Jacksonville plus 13.5. Baltimore minus 2.5. Cleveland minus 3.5. Tennessee plus 3. Dallas plus 1. Seattle minus 15. Buffalo plus 3. And Denver plus 3. Denver minus 3. Now the rest of these games, I'm just picking just to see kind of how I do. I have reasons for them. If you're wondering, just leave a comment and I'll get back to you on that. Some of these games with these points are just crazy. Like I would never bet Seattle minus 15. However, if you're looking at teaser, this week 3 is probably the best week to do it. New England, Seattle, you could tease those with one other team that you really like. Maybe Pittsburgh or St. Louis, just going the opposite direction there. And that might work out really well. In fact, I think Seattle and New England, and maybe Green Bay, would be a nice teaser. So we'll see how I do this week. Ironically, like I was saying, I think week 3 is super tough, but I do really like the Eagles. A lot of people liked the Jets last week, and I think those same people still might like the Jets this week, but we'll just see how it goes. So thanks for listening. Leave your opinions down below in the comment section, and I look forward to this week, seeing how I do.